At just 18 years old, Wai Jia Tam set out to change the lives of at-risk girls in Nepal. And she succeeded in that in a very big way. And through that dream, so many more dreams came. Today, she's an award-winning humanitarian, a medical doctor serving in remote places, an author, and the founder of the international social venture, Kite Song Global. She joins us now to share her story. Welcome to 100 Huntley Street, Wai Jia.
Oh, it's my privilege, Lara. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're so thankful that you're joining us today. So you grew up, you moved from Malaysia to Singapore when you were 1 year old.
Yeah.
And you grew up in initially a home that was a Buddhist home.
Yeah.
And today, so much of what you do is fueled by your faith in Jesus, your relationship with God.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about your journey from being a child in a Buddhist family to becoming a follower of Jesus.
Wow, Lara. When I look back, it feels wild. I grew up in a Buddhist household that worshipped several different kinds of gods. There were idols, and every holiday that we had, my family would drive for hours from Singapore to Malaysia to worship at a temple. And I remember distinctly at the age of 17, when I was in the middle of this huge temple, worshipping on my knees, in front of a golden-coated, 100-foot-long sleeping Buddha. Oh. I felt a nudge and a voice in my heart saying, I am God, but I'm not here. Mm. That was a chilling sensation to have as a 17-year-old. Yeah. But that began my spiritual search for who God was. Yeah. So I started to just read more, find out more about who God is. Mm-hmm. And through exploring several different types of religions, for some reason, it was the God of love, Jesus, that drew me to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you began to read the Bible, and some of those Bible verses really stood out for you.
Yes. I think the one verse that has changed my life the most is Hebrews 11:1. Faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And even at 17, you were about to start on a journey where you had to have a lot of faith. Mm-hmm. Because one of your school teachers invited you on a trip to Cambodia to lead a small group of students.
Yes.
And what happened for you in Cambodia?
Wow. Cambodia was such an eye-opening trip for me. I grew up in like a middle-income, pretty well-off family. I never had to worry about anything. It was really a sterile bubble in Singapore. Yeah. And going into this rural village in Cambodia, having to meet children who had grown up on farms and lived in orphanages, that just really blew my mind. Yeah. And I remember one of the nights, I stayed over at a little village girl's house. And all night, we sobbed into each other's arms because she, like me, wanted to become a medical doctor. But unlike me, she would never have the means to do so. And as we cried into the night, I realized that we all have dreams, but some of us don't have the means to pursue them. In the following week, I was helping out at an orphanage. We were painting murals for the homes, and a little boy came up to me. Likewise, he too had big dreams for his life, but he didn't have means to pursue them. And as a parting gift, he gave me a kite that was made out of a trash bag. And as I held that gift in my hands, I had such a poignant moment with God because I realized that it represented all the dreams that we could fly, but yet not all of us get to. And in the middle of the kite, I saw made of sticks was a cross. And suddenly I felt the Holy Spirit speak to me that when our dreams are anchored on the cross, when we put a little bit of faith in our big God, that's when they can truly fly.
Wai Jia, that's such a moving story. And I know that it ignited something within you.
Yes.
And you went home and, I know you wanted to raise funds for the young girl you had encountered so she could go on to become the doctor she dreamed of being. And one day, you did become a doctor yourself. But before that even happened, you finished high school and a lot of your friends were going to university, but you felt this call. You felt a call to Nepal.
Yes.
And your family, you had to convince them. Well, God convinced them. God convinced your dad to let you go.
Yeah.
That was an interesting story.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So it was really crazy because, as a 17-year-old girl, I mean, I asked my father if he would let me go to Nepal. And this was at the time, Nepal with the Maoist uprising, people were burning flags, there were power outages, there was just so much political instability. And my father, like any other conventional, traditional, good Asian dad, he said no. And I hadn't even stayed home later than 10 p.m. at night, not even on prom day. So it was just wild for him to even consider that. But I remember going on my knees every single night and just asking God, like, God, if you are real, if you are real, because I wasn't even sure at that time. Like, I had just accepted Christ, but was he really real? I needed to know. So I told God, I said, would you just speak to me in such a real way? Move my father's heart. I don't know how you're going to do it, but show me that you are real. So I asked him night after night, every single night, and his answer was always the same. And one day I just pleaded to God. I said, God, you have to move his heart. This happened week after week until one day my dad comes home from work and there's this look of bewilderment on his face. And he says, I have a very small company of like 5 staff under me. And one of them tells me that there is a Singaporean missionary who is serving women rescued from sex trafficking in Nepal. And she's coming back next week. And she says that she wants to meet me over lunch. And she wants to convince me that she's going to look out for you. So they meet, and he's shocked. So he lets me go without realizing that the entire trip would change my life forever.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And change the trajectory of your life and where God takes you and the things he does through you, through your heart and your passions.
Yes.
Your skills, and you go to Nepal and you go to this home. This home is likely could be full of young girls who are so heartbroken, but there's a different feeling in that home. What were you encountering there?
Wow. There was such a sense of awe when I was staying in the home. Many of the girls had been abused or abandoned by their own families. And what struck me the most was the sense of sacrifice that the house parents, the missionary house parents, had to do to raise these girls as their own. And as I lived with them, I began to see this bizarre, wild, audacious joy that these girls had because they knew Jesus. In spite of everything that had happened.
Young girls.
Yeah, these young girls, as young as from age 3 to 12 at the time. And they showed me the reality of Jesus because of the joy they had in their lives. But little did I know that midway into our stay, as I lived with them through that winter, that halfway through our stay, that we would all be traumatically evicted overnight. And I know many of us have moved homes, and moving homes is like just a phone call away, just calling the movers. But for me to see their entire world fall apart just because of this phone call from a landlord was just earth-shattering to me. I remember standing in front of that home, watching everything fall apart. Every single girl was dismantling their beds, packing their socks and their underwear and just piling everything on this dirty pickup truck. And what I learned from the house parents was that this happened year after year, every year. And every time it happened, all these girls who were, the best and the brightest of their cohorts in school, they had to be disenrolled from school and restart life all over again somewhere else. So I asked the house parents, I said, is there anything at all that can be done? And they said, yes, we need a permanent home, but it will cost over $100,000. And I said, $100,000? How is that going to happen? And as I continued to live with them, I remember on my last day, as I was dropped off at the Kathmandu airport, I had said goodbye to the missionary house parents already. But as I picked up my luggage, I couldn't. And so I turned back and I ran back to him. And I said, Pastor Eric, I have something crazy to tell you. What if I published a picture book and use it to raise funds, And he looked at me and he said, Wai Jia, you just have to do it. It's our only chance. And so I carried this little dream back to Singapore. But I was crushed because every person I met told me that it would never happen. They told me, you're 17, you have no credentials. And it was true. I was awkward. I was depressed. I had no Christian connections because I never grew up in a Christian household. Yeah. I was just so lost. But again, I said the same prayer. I said, God, if you are real, if you care for these little girls, would you use someone like me to do something for them? And all it took was one other person to believe in me. And another, and another. And before I knew it, I met a publisher who said, I'll sponsor 2,000 copies of the book. But that's on one condition, because your paintings are really bad.
I love that part of your story. I love how there's always a challenge when God, we say, okay, God, yes, here's our yes, we'll do it. Yeah. And then it's like, you got to work a bit more. Yeah. And so this publisher partners with you and you work on your paintings.
Yes.
And you create this beautiful book, Kite Song. It's so, and I have to tell you, did you ever work on your paintings? Because these paintings and the illustrations are just beautiful. Oh. And the story is a beautiful story. Would you summarize the story for our viewers?
Of course. It's a very simple story about a little girl who has a beautiful kite. She loses it and she finds it.
It's her dream.
It is her dream.
It's dream.
Yeah.
And within 3 months, you had raised the $100,000 that you needed to raise to give the girls in Nepal a permanent home.
Yes.
Their forever home.
Yes.
And today you're married to a lovely man named Cliff. I just got to meet him. He is so wonderful. You have 2 daughters.
Yeah.
And you go back to that home every 2.5 years or so. And you visit the girls.
Yes.
What's happening in their lives? What do you see happening?
Wow. So there is this picture in our living room that is actually a picture of 2 photos of nearly the same girls seated in nearly the same positions, side by side, juxtaposed next to each other, but 10 years apart. And that photo is so powerful to me because it shows me the power of a little bit of faith and how that can transform lives over the course of 10 years. So the girls that I had met, the little ones, now they have grown. Many of them have become preschool teachers or have gone back to the home to help, or some of them have married pastors and gone on to become moms themselves.
Wai Jia, it's incredible to hear what God has done through your life. And I know today you have done so many more things. Of course, you've written now 4 books. And maybe more. No, you've written 5 books. You also serve as a missionary in remote locations. You are an award-winning humanitarian today. And you work with the World Health Organization, the United Nations. It's incredible to see everything God has done through your life. And it started with such a small dream.
Yes.
And for those watching right now, men and women watching saying, I have this small dream in my heart, but maybe I feel too shaky or insecure or not strong enough to pursue that dream. What would you say to them right now?
I would say, wow, steward that dream. Be faithful and tend to it. Because you know what, Lara? I think so many of us want to dream brave, and the world around us will tell us to dream big for God. But I actually feel what the Holy Spirit has been teaching me is the opposite. It's to be brave, to dream small. I know it's crazy, but think about it. Like this $100,000 story, the home for the girls, it just started with being faithful to one thing, painting a little picture book. And all those opportunities about, me serving with the World Health Organization or the United Nations, those were big dreams I had when I was 17, but they never came to pass until I was in my 30s. And it wasn't through the way that I had imagined. I thought, when I went to Johns Hopkins, maybe some big doors would open and I would do great things for God. But God didn't teach me that way. Yeah. Instead, it was through the COVID-19 pandemic when I was being approached by a mentor for me to draw and illustrate some health booklets for migrant workers who were, struggling with COVID-19. And they were all quarantined in these huge dormitories housing tens of thousands of them. All I was asked to do was to illustrate a health booklet. And to me at that time, I wish I told you, I said, yes, God, I'll do it. I'm so excited to serve you. But I didn't. I scoffed at it. I said, really? I'm like a Hopkins graduate. You want me to just draw a little health booklet? Isn't there more I can do? But the amazing thing was when I realized that what God was asking me to do was to be faithful with the small things.
Yes.
That was when he opened the doors, because the chairperson for the World Health Organization Steering Committee of Singapore at the time, he contacted me and he said, "Are you a professional cartoonist? Because I need you on my team." And I'm like, no. Yes, this is all a mistake. I'm a doctor. Like, use me somehow. I don't know how. And that's how he put me in charge of health communications. That's how I got deployed with the United Nations to Eswatini the next year in Africa. And so when I look back on my journey, I keep thinking to myself, God, are you teaching me to dream big and dream brave for you? Like from the start? Or are you teaching me to really learn how to dream brave through being faithful in the small things, the little things in our lives?
Yes.
So to any woman who's listening in today, if you think that you feel too small, too insecure, too little about your shaky dreams, I want to encourage you to just be brave and put them in the hands of a big God. Because it's not how much faith we have that makes our dreams come true. It's about recognizing whom we are placing our faith in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wai Jia, such good words. I love it. I'm so inspired. I know so many of our viewers are. It makes me think of the parable of the mustard seed. The smallest little seed grows into the biggest, strongest plant.
Exactly.
Wow, Wai Jia, we're so thankful that you've joined us today. Well, we're so thankful you've shared your story with us, and we can't wait to stay updated on everything else God does through your life.
Thank you, Lara.